Welcome to the Skol Purple podcast. And once again, here we are in the 2023-24 Minnesota Vikings regular season. And once again, gentlemen, not a great result. But if there's a silver lining, we're 0-2 in one-score games. Wait, that's not a silver lining, is it? Joining me tonight is Tony and Mike. Gentlemen, how we feeling? You guys look a lot more chipper than what I expected.
I mean, it's just I'm kind of used to it. No, I mean, really, I don't know. I mean, happy that tomorrow's Friday. There's that. We got
That's
that
right.
going for us. And I know we'll get into all the takes, but yeah, so not great. I think I'm in almost like a state of denial at this point. Just because it's hard to play as good but also as badly all at the same time, and it's just very weird. As a Vikings fan, it's just a new kind of challenge. So we'll get into all the details, but that's kind of how I'm feeling. Just a little shocked, but maybe unsurprised. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Mike, how you doing there, buddy?
It's I'm doing great. All things considered, right? I think the worst part about it is we have to wait so long for the next game. You just got to feel this. I don't know what the feeling is, but you got to feel it for a lot longer, and just wish there was a quicker turnaround. But that's what we felt last week, so here we are.
Here we are, indeed.
Yep. Here we are, indeed.
Yeah, Carson actually, for all of everybody that's watching, he was really excited about this game, and I thought he was in a great mood. He really enjoyed himself. He told me on multiple occasions he wishes all the games were just like this.
That's right. I hope we turn the ball over 4 times every week and, make it exciting in the end. That's all we want, right? We want it to be exciting. We don't care if we win or lose. That is false. We want this team to win a frickin' championship. Dang it.
Yeah, I've heard of a lot of different schemes out there. Like I've heard of the air raid. There's the West Coast. I think this is the first time
Have you heard of the Kirk raid, though?
I was gonna say this is the first time I've seen of the hot potato offensive scheme. So it's just hey, we never know when it's coming out. It's just gonna pop on out. That's that Brett Favre offense.
Yep. It's the 2009 NFC Championship game offense, right?
Yeah. Well, I was just more or less referring to his Wrangler jeans. So, but the adults can figure out what that means.
This is a family-friendly show, in case anybody forgot.
He does. He used to be the spokesperson for Wranglers. There's nothing weird about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you make it weird. All right. Well, as you file in here, hopefully we get plenty of people ready to discuss their thoughts and feelings. Please comment in the comment section your thoughts. Please let us know your takes, the hottest takes, the coldest takes, all the takes in the comment section here on YouTube. Gentlemen, 34-28, 4 turnovers by the Vikings in this game. Once again, Justin Jefferson does his thing, even on Darius Slay, who we know he struggled against a season ago. But Vikings get the L, regardless of JJ's big day once again. And again, the 4 turnovers, they could not stop a nosebleed they couldn't catch a cold. I don't know how you want to phrase how bad the run defense was in this game, but it was terrible. And I think Brian Flores maybe knew that it would be, and he was mainly trying to stop the big plays in the passing game and hoping that would be enough. Because here's the thing, we got to give credit to that Eagles offensive line. It's really good. And so we have to start with that. But also, I was in another group chat during the game, and I think the Vikings might have a bottom 5 outside of Danielle Hunter, a bottom 5 defensive line in football right now. It is that bad. Like, nobody on that defensive line for Minnesota other than Hunter is average or above average. So, curious your guys' thoughts on those first few things, and then we'll expose some more stuff here. But we'll start with Mike on this one. What do you think?
Obviously JJ did what he did, but Addison had the big play, same as he did last week, but then he's kind of not there for most of the game. You don't even see him in the picture. It's just he kind of disappears and then shows up for a big play. And KJ obviously dropping everything, and he's a good receiver. We need him to make those plays, and that's what you're there for, and he didn't. So our receiver room is great, but they haven't been playing together. It's one or the other, and it's mostly JJ. So I'm a little bit surprised he didn't see more going to those guys this week, but sometimes that's just how it is. And the D-line, you mentioned D-line looked bad, played bad. I think a lot of it was the defensive scheme, like you said as well. We're going to play coverage. We're going to, hope to stop the run and force them to pass, but we never got out of it. Sometimes we had our second middle linebacker out in the slot trying to fake blitzes, which is great, but then you're leaving your 3D linemen and one middle linebacker who's already undersized. So they fit their gaps well, and then once that running back can bounce out, once that gap's filled, we had nobody to fill the bounces, and that's what they did all day long. We made Swift look like Le'Veon Bell in his prime. And we know he's not that good. He played really well today. Surprisingly, I was thinking throughout the whole game, how did Detroit how weren't they able to use him the entire time there like Philly did tonight?
Yeah. Well, I think Philly's offensive line's probably a little better than the Lions. And
Sure, yeah.
we also saw too that the Lions were unable to use TJ Hawkinson, which we obviously know he's better than what the Lions showed that they were able to do with him. So, Tony, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Swift, I thought this is where you're going to go with it, Mike, but the guy's just never been able to stay healthy. Like, he can't stay on the field, so I felt like all of a sudden by the fourth quarter, he was just going to like shatter like glass or something, because I've never seen Swift last that long without some sort of injuries. So we'll see. He's a good back. Like, he's a guy that is very, very talented. He just has had crazy injury issues throughout his career, and just always. And every time he started showing promise, that's when the injury would happen. So look, I'm not wishing any ill will on DeAndre Swift. I'm just saying, if all of a sudden next week they're like, oh, and Swift's down, looks like it's an ACL. Like, I mean, it would just be something bad. That'd be so on brand for Swift. So, it is what it is. I just think what we saw tonight was a good offense with Philly. I think one thing that we can't lose sight of, unlike last week where I think we probably felt like from a talent perspective, the Vikings should have beaten the Buccaneers. This Eagles team is a good Eagles team. I mean, they are a team that is not that indifferent from the Eagles that were in the Super Bowl, less than a year ago. So to me, what do we got? We got a commenter. We're willing to admit it was a fluke that the Vikings aren't really that good. So I would say this. I think the Vikings got really lucky in a lot of places last year, and we didn't shy away from that on the show at all. I think we were pretty realistic about the fact that the Vikings became an incredibly lucky team as that year went on. I will say this for Run Hard, Get Paid. I love the name, by the way. What a lot of people fail to remember is the year prior, so the 2021 season, the Vikings were 0-8 in one-score games. So again, it's one of those things where I get everybody's like, he needs to come back to the mean. Well,
what you're saying, Tony, So what you're saying, Tony, is we're almost completely canceled out of
Almost,
one-score
yeah.
games. We've got one more game left. So what you're saying,
Yeah, and it is what it is. So I just think that ultimately, and I said this before the season started, if the defense could be better, which I assumed they would be. Now, again, low bar because the Vikings defense last year was horrid. They would be ultimately a more well-rounded team this year. Ultimately, a better team because they'd be a bit more balanced offensively, defensively. But given the circumstances of the fact that they weren't going to get as lucky as they were last year, we were playing a really hard schedule this year. I felt they'd be a better team with a worse record. Now, so far, the first part of that statement is not true. This team has looked unprepared. This team has looked undisciplined. This team has looked not well coached overall the first 2 weeks. And I know that's being very critical, but it is true. You don't make this many mistakes. And I get that sometimes things happen and I get that, but it's kind of like somebody that like always loses jobs over and over and over again. The first couple, you're like, yeah, maybe that was a bad place to work. And then after like the fifth job that they can't keep, you're like, I kind of think there's something weird with you. And so it's kind of a similar deal with the Vikings right now. Like the first game was, things happen. Now we get into this game and it's like, this seems like it might be uniquely to this team problem. And it does come down to discipline and it comes down to coaching. One of the things that, not to be long-winded here, but I'm going to let you guys hopefully pick a lot of this apart. We never had a discipline problem with Zimmer. And I be the first one to tell you it was Zimmer's time to go, right? However, one of the issues with leaving the Zimmer regime and going to Kevin O'Connell was, we were leaving a little bit of that disciplined football mentality behind. And I don't know about you guys, but at this point, we do look a bit undisciplined. And it does seem to be an issue. So we've also lost a lot of the veterans that were still a holdover from that regime. And again, I would be the first person to say, it was time for guys like Thielen to go. But there's something about not making these critical errors and mistakes. So to me right now, I saw somebody on Twitter, I'll leave you with this here for a little bit and let you guys talk. They said, does Flores make it through the end of the year?
Oh my gosh. My gosh. Are you kidding? Are you kidding?
It was kind of tongue in cheek. There was some sarcasm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm bad at picking that up on social media, especially.
The run defense was rough. So, I get that was kind of the cheeky nature of that tweet. But I did respond and I said, I don't think Flores is really the problem. The question is, and of course, this was also very tongue in cheek here. Does KOC make it to the end of the year? And obviously he will. I'm not really thinking he wouldn't, but if we really think about it, like it's not looking good for the new regime right now. Things are looking very out of sorts and you just can't make these mistakes. It's mistakes, guys. This isn't like they're not executing. It legit is like they're playing sloppy football that just screams to me like there's a leadership problem. And it's going to stay that way. And I get it's a perception, but we got to get this thing back on the tracks. So I'll shut my mouth now for a little bit.
Well, what I would say to that is that's the problem sometimes with players coaches, right? Like these guys, they love their coach, KOC, they'd ride and die with him or whatever, but it's like you've got to find a way to be able to discipline your players in a way that is respectful, but yet also like they know who's boss. I feel like there maybe is a little too much buddy with KOC and his players. And I mean, not that that's totally a bad thing, but you have to draw a line as player coach, right? But I do kind of hear where you're going on that, Tony. So let me get to these comments. What are the Eagles doing at the end of the game? What were they doing? Well, the Vikings had 2 timeouts, and they wanted to make sure that they ran as much time off as they could. There would have been less time running off the clock had they not, or had they taken knees instead of run the ball. Running the ball takes a little bit more time off the clock. So that's what I would say to that. DeAndre Swift was always hurt in Detroit. Everything is pain. Viking Pete, absolutely. We know that to be the case all the time. Yeah, and as Tony mentioned, we got you already on that run hard, get paid. We talked about that last year quite a bit, man. The Vikings were sort of a fluke. I was believing that all the way until the Buffalo game, and then I should have just said the Buffalo game was a fluke because it kind of was. But yeah, and then minus turnovers. That's what I was just telling Mike before Tony came into the room. But you take away these turnovers, and you can't take them away. I will repeat that all day long. You can't take the turnovers away. But if you did, even the Jefferson one at the end of the first half, that's a 10-point swing. A 10-point swing right there. And that's just one turnover. Can we stop with this crap, please? And then, yes, I think he makes a good point. Run hard, get paid. Talking about the Chargers, and we'll talk about that. But, yes, it's going to be very interesting to see because Austin Eckler, first of all, we'll see if he's healthy for that game. But also, the Chargers do have a solid running attack with Eckler and whoever else they've got there. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on because, and maybe that was just part of the game plan because here's the thing. I thought last week, guys, the Vikings run defense was probably one of the best things about the team last week. The Bucs averaged like 2.5 yards a carry on offense last week. So the run defense was not a problem a week ago, but tonight it was. And I think it's precisely because they were worried about giving up the big play down the field. But also partly because of the Eagles offensive line and the Vikings inept defensive line, which we knew the Vikings defensive line was not going to be good coming into the season, or at least average at best. If you thought anything different, I'm sorry, but could have told you that one. He's also a Detroit fan, so he's really hoping for our misery here.
It's going good. Who's Detroit play this next week?
That is a good looking question.
That was a beautiful question.
Look that up.
It was muy guapo question.
I guess the next question I have for you guys while I look that up. Actually, I'll just look it up right now. I've got it right in front of me here. They play the Seahawks, so that could be a tough game if Seattle bounces back. That's another question. So.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that'll be a fun one.
Yeah, it's a nooner. It's a nooner for you, Tony.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but there was a part of me, like right after this game ended, and I thought to myself, you know what? One silver lining. I'm going to be able to watch football on Sunday, stress-free. I don't have to worry my team can't lose.
That is exactly right.
We can't lose.
Unfortunately, my old lady caught wind of no game Sunday, so she's already made plans for me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm stuck.
Yeah.
I gladly accept it.
Are you going apple picking?
Holy crap, that's one of the things that we're going to do. But she's super pregnant, so she can't. So I got to take the kid.
Apple picking, and it's one of the things. Oh, my gosh. That's amazing. That's
I knew
amazing.
it. Yeah. They love to do that on Sundays. It's a Sunday activity. You're usually picking apples or some sort of gourd pumpkin.
That's right. That's right. All right, gentlemen. Next question I want to talk to you a little bit about. I guess this kind of goes back to the turnovers, but actually, you know what? Let's talk about the running game. We talked about the run defense. Let's talk about the running game offensively. 3.5 yards per carry. not great. Not great.
I'm surprised it's that much.
Yeah, well, I think a couple of runs towards the end of the game from Madison probably helped, but yeah, it didn't even seem like they had that. I agree. I'm just curious from your guys' perspective, how concerned are you with this running game? And I think the biggest concern, obviously, as we stated last week, it's not Alexander Madison, it's this awful offensive line. Especially when Christian Darrisaw went down today, and hopefully he recovers quickly because boy, that you hate to see that. And then they got their third string guy out there because Udo's hurt and he's probably out for the season, or hopefully not. But and then you bring in DQ, I call him now, David Quisenberry or Quisenberry, DQ. We're calling him DQ. That is final. But what are your guys' thoughts on the running game? We'll start with Tony this time and go back to Mike.
Yeah, we're gonna call DQ Hot Eats Cool Treats. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I obviously, again, I'm on social media taking out my frustrations, not posting anything, just angrily looking at other people's posts.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
yeah.
typing it into the tweet box and then deleting, which I've done before.
Oh yeah, I do that a couple times. I've done that a couple times. Yeah, so I did see out there in especially the Twitterverse, the Xverse, whatever, that people are of course like, well, where's Dalvin? That's working out for you real well, blah blah blah, and it's just
how'd he do Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a Dalvin. Yeah, actually, you know what? It looks about the same. Like that's
right.
That's the issue. At least this version is about $10 million cheaper than the last version, which literally had basically the same output. The problem isn't a Dalvin to Madison issue. The problem is that we can't get any more production. It looks just as bad. That's where I'm angry about it. It has nothing to do with really personnel at this point, outside of, again, as you mentioned, offensive line, but not at the running back position. So they've got to figure it out. It also doesn't help that they've dug themselves into these holes where they become a bit one-dimensional. You got to pass. You got to have these big strikes when you're, again, constantly just pass the baton randomly every once in a while. Like, no, we don't want the ball anymore. So it's just, yeah, I don't know. I say they'll figure it out, hopefully, but at the same time, I mean, look, at this point, we go a few more games like this, I'd just say, let's just put Jaron Hall in and see what happens, because might as well start the collapse for Caleb. I'm starting it right now. Hashtag collapse for Caleb.
I like that a lot. I think obviously our run game isn't great, but I think it's partly because of our the run scheme. Seems like the weakest part of our line is the middle, and we're trying to push the middle and pound the rock when we're not built for that at all. And there was a few times we went outside, tossed sweeps, and they were successful. There was room there. Got those D linemen running out there, getting them tired, but we just didn't go back to it at all throughout the game when it was our only success running the ball at times, it seemed. We got to keep rolling. Even though we're getting behind and we make all these mistakes, we can't go away from it in the first half. I don't know how many carries we had, but it wasn't enough. And at that point, they're just going to start teeing off on our O-line, and then they're struggling. I bet Udo didn't even get injured. It's a Bradbury thing over again, man. I'm out of here. I'm just going to fall down and get the stretcher out here. I'm going to make a scene of this. I'm going to get home, and I'm going to be in better shape than if I played. But it just looks like we're not going away from that middle run and hoping Madison bounces it out like Cook. That's what we do miss with Cook, is that ability to take that little bounce out. And just the threat of that with the defense, knowing that the defense just crashes the middle and we're just putting our head down and trying to power through. And that's great when you need that, but it can't be every time we carry. Madison looked scared to me. He looked hesitant, at least, not scared. and he got a shoulder injury at some point. It looked like the next series he was in, and it looked like he didn't want to mess with that. I don't know. It just Chandler was in there for one play I saw, got a stuffed at the line, but he looked better just in that 0 run yard gain. He looked better than Madison. Looked like he was lighter on his feet. Looked like he was hitting the hole or could hit the hole. And we just used Madison too much. I don't know if he's a better pass blocker, if that's why we have him in there. I'm not sure. But he can't catch either. Kept wiping his gloves. He's dropping balls. It's just he was one of my high points last week, one of my low points this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't disagree with your assessment. I think that, with a lot of these guys, too, there's high expectations. And, he's got some shoes to fill. He understands that. Everybody this whole entire offseason has been asking him in every single interview, how you going to do? How is it going to be filling in for Dalvin, right? Like, I know we had Dalvin last year. How's it going to feel to be the guy now? And, things obviously haven't gone well. And then early in the game, the ball gets punched out. And look, yeah, you got to secure the ball, but it was also a good defensive play. Let's not act like it wasn't. It wasn't like he was just out there going butterfingers with it. So got to secure the ball, but the defender made a play. But I'm just saying I think it wouldn't be surprising to me if you see guys start to have some confidence things. I think that maybe saw that a little bit with KJ. I mean, I know KJ got the touchdown when he was wide open there towards the end, but I texted this to this group earlier, especially after Addison had the long touchdown. Said Addison's eating his lunch right now. People were all talking about who's the number two. I was pretty secure in saying that I think Osborne is the number 2 to start the year, but I put an over and under on game 5. I said over under was my bet on when Addison becomes the number 2, and it might be earlier than that. If you bet the under, you might be a winner.
And KJ's getting more opportunities. It seems like he's just dropping them, not taking advantage of them, and that's going to change. By the way,
let's see if I've got that in here. Is there drops? Nope, there's not on this. But yeah, I think he had 2 or 3 drops tonight. But RC talks basketball and Caitlin Clark, love it. Go Hawks. Horrible 2 games to start the season. I don't know if we're going to have a good season. Offensively, we're good. Defensively, we couldn't cover in a bed with 2 blankets on it. I don't like Kirk Cousins either. He's not a franchise quarterback, has never been. We've been winning games with him. If we continue losing, you got to look at the defense and Kirk. Well, let me just say this. Kirk Cousins was not the reason the Vikings lost this game today. 4 turnovers. One of them, I will say, his pocket awareness on the strip sack, that was absolutely brutal pocket awareness. But other than that, he played a really, really good game. So it's the turnovers, man. It's the turnovers and the inability to get the running game going and the inability to stop the run, really. And then, a couple of big plays in the passing game for Philadelphia. But yeah, I'm not a Kirk defender. For anybody that's new coming in here, you should know I'm not a Kirk defender. I'm just saying what I saw tonight. I mean, he played well. I actually don't disagree with your take in terms of finding a new quarterback for the future. The Vikings need to do that this offseason unless they think Jaron Hall is that guy. But he was not the reason they lost the game. And to your point, Mike, on KJ Osborne, they gotta put him on the bench if he keeps doing this, man. Like, I mean, it was just one game, and I know the pass last week, whatever. You could chalk it up to him, you could chalk it up to Cousins, or it was just a good play by the defense, whatever. At the goal line last week against Tampa, but I think if you can't start making some of these catches. Not that they were there was one that was a pretty big time catch if he made it. Another one, not so much. But you got to put Jordan Addison in. Get Hawkinson in. Even Jalen Naylor, for crying out loud. Like, get some of these other guys opportunities. Catch the ball. I mean, obviously you don't want to burn your players' confidence this early in the season, but at the same time, especially if you're losing like the way the Vikings were at one point, like you got to have guys out there that can catch, And I mean, KJ, we know. I'm not gonna. Maybe I'm being too hard on him. We know KJ's capable. It's just a matter of showing it and executing, right? Execution. That's always the thing. Like people that want to be hard on KOC, which I don't think you shouldn't be hard on KOC based on some of this, the way it's unfolded. But he can call the perfect play, as I've said multiple times, and it does not matter one bit if the team does not execute, whether that's the offensive line, whether it's the quarterback, whether it's the wide receivers, whoever. If somebody doesn't execute, that play does not matter. The play call does not matter. So, yeah. Anyways, I'll throw back over to you, Tony, if you want to give any more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, this team has to get out of its own way. At the end of the day, there's a lot of blame to be given, a lot of blame to go around for different players, coaches, schemes. I mean, there's just, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, last year, the one thing that we had, certainly besides luck, we had a lot of that last year too, was generally we understood the deficiencies that we had, and it was just more or less trying to overcome them. Right now, they're coming from everywhere. It feels like this team. I don't know. Like, I don't know all the things that aren't good. And I wish I could say, well, the offense is humming, but the defense is kind of suspect. It's like, well, at times they are, but then at other times they look just uninspired. Like they don't have an identity. The defense, does it look like an improved unit from last year, even through 2 games of losses? Yes, but last year was really, really bad. So again, low bar. But then again, tonight they can't stop the run. I mean, it was like they were just getting pushed around. There were moments where it felt like we got out hustled tonight. Like their guys just overpowered us. I mean, and I don't know how like emasculating that is to an NFL player, but it can't feel great. So it's just, this team has a lot to work on, and we're 2 games in and we still don't have a game in the win column. So it could be a long road this year for us, and a weird, unsurprising to some, but certainly for folks like me, I would be pretty surprised if we really have that much of a dumpster fire of a season. I wasn't expecting this team to go to the Super Bowl, but I was expecting us to flirt with playoffs. Boy, oh boy, at this point, it's going to be like, are we going to get a top 10 draft pick? I mean, that's about, unless we fix things, and we can. It's only 2 games in, but right now there isn't a lot of evidence to suggest that we're turning the ship anytime soon.
Well, I think.
Go ahead, Mike.
Most of the stuff we're talking about is all fixable things. It's not anything. We're a good football team, like you said. We can't get out of our way, so it's a couple, 2-game stretch that's bad. But I have a lot of faith still. The defense is better. Our offense, when we put together stuff, we can't get in second and long. It's you guys said uninspired. I think it's once we get 2nd and 10 or more, we're pretty much already setting up to putt and reset, and we just can't get anything on first down. 2nd down's even worse, and we're making 3rd downs, and it's like, wow, this has got to balance out somewhere. We're going to be getting 3-4 yards on first down like we should be, getting the rhythm of, because as soon as you get stuffed on the first down play, that changes the next play call. He had something planned we're going to hit this for 4 yards, then we're going to go to this. Well, he got stuffed for 2-yard loss. I got to scramble and find something else for a 2nd and long. And we're not in that rhythm yet. It's a new running back. It's a new, coaches in some aspects. The run game coach, I think, is new, and he's figuring stuff out with the offensive lineman cycling through and not being too strong in the middle anyways. So obviously I'm upset. I'm not too bummed out about it though, because I think it's a long season. Clearly we see every year this happens, and we have the team to be able to make up for this. So I'm not too worried about that. And I think a lot of our run game issues too, where we were on the field forever.
Yeah.
And we played well in the first half, and then we were just wore out. You could tell Ivan Pace, who's, has a lot of heart and a lot of soul, he was getting up slow, and not because he was injured. He's just moping around. He's tired. And they don't have that rotation at the linebacker position to be on the field that long. They're young, they're small, they're going to get beat up. You need to be able to rotate them or get them off the field, and we just couldn't do it.
Yeah, well, the defense had to be, they were getting gassed because, they're constantly on the field, and it seemed like all those turnovers came in short clusters, and that just for a defense, it's deflating, especially when you get them, off of especially that one that came off a punt return, right, where it's like they get them off the field, good defensive stop, and now you're right back out there again. So it's just, it's rough.
Well, and to your guys' point, I don't know if you remember seeing the graphic on there when they were talking about how the Vikings point differential from the first 3 quarters to the fourth quarter a season ago. It kind of seems like there's a little bit of that going on again. The first quarter point differential, also the turnovers in the first quarter, just absolutely terrible. But I thought this was a good point by RC Talks Basketball and Caitlin. Again, go Hawks. We were scoring when some of the pressure was off. Like, oh boy, down by 13, let's score. Oh, down again by 14, let's score. Hopefully that doesn't become habitual. I do agree. I think there is some of that where Philadelphia, too, maybe laid off the gas a little bit defensively. And, of course, they had injuries in their secondary on their defensive line a little bit, too. But, yeah, I think there's some truth to that. And look at that. Appreciate the post-game coverage analysis. Show rocks. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate it.
Or lady, depending.
So we don't know. It could be RC or Caitlin.
That's right. Maybe it is Caitlin Clark just joining the show. And Caitlin, if it is you, we got to set up an interview. All right.
That's right.
All right. And then we got Josh chiming in. Did we discuss how badly Ingram was already, and do we pick up Dalton Risner to replace him? Also, is there anything that can be done about the D tackles, or are we stuck? Well, unless the Vikings make a trade, I think we're stuck with the defensive tackles and the defensive line situation until next year. Dalton Risner would be great. I think, honestly, you could put a loaf of bread at right guard, and you'd probably have a better right guard. And I know that sounds terrible, but gosh, Ed Ingram has been so bad. And maybe his PFF grade will be better than I think it was tonight. But he had like a 40-something PFF grade in week 1. And it's like, man, I think maybe Mike mentioned this earlier, that he didn't think the offensive line played all that badly, probably pass protection wise. And for the most part, I'd agree, but there was a few times, especially in that first half, I think in the second half, the Vikings did a much better job of protecting the pass game, but the running game, you could tell, was affected by the lack of good offensive line play, if you will. So yeah, it's it's going to be interesting to see. And, again, I go back to this. I talked with Luke Braun from Locked On Vikings for our season preview, and he mentioned this too, of like, yep, we're bringing back the exact same guys for better or for worse. Here we go. It's basically like the Vikings are marrying themselves to this offensive line once again this year. Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, solid A type of tackles, but the rest of it is not great. And Bradbury is not even that good when he's healthy, but he's better than Schlotman, obviously. But Cleveland, I thought, had a couple of whiffs tonight, and then Ingram. But, I will say I was expecting that Eagles defensive line to have a bigger impact on Cousins than what it did. There was that touchdown pass he threw to Osborne, I think it was, that ended up being, which I think I need to change that in the stats down there, by the way. But I do think that he was pretty close to getting sacked or strip sacked on that touchdown pass to Osborne in the deep red, as they say. But
what they did do is they did a good job, especially in early in the game, moving Kirk around, having a lot of movement on the line pre-snap. So I think that was the whole point, was to try to keep that defensive line off balance. And ultimately, to varying degrees, I felt like it was effective. So yeah, I would agree. That was my biggest concern coming into this game, was how is that interior defensive line that's very good for the Eagles going to basically just, have an all-you-can-eat buffet with Ingram and Cleveland there. And by the way, Carson, I would say that Ingram probably is better than standard, like the Bimbo bread. I don't know if you've ever seen the Bimbo bread. It's really like light. I'd say he's
Wonder bread.
Yeah, he's better than that. But I would say you put like some 47 grain like bird
Country
seed
hard
bread in there. Yeah, they might slip on that. So you might be onto something.
That's great. That's great.
I didn't see Cleveland make too many mistakes. I feel like he's playing better this year, but obviously we need more from that position. It's not who I want there, but I think he's playing all right. Obviously Ingram, we're never going to see anything he does well because we're not looking for that, but I think he played with more aggression today, if anything. Of course, he's still making those mistakes. I think he was a 5th round graded guard that we took in the 2nd round, and people were real confused. And here we are, still confused. So he's not going to be a world beater. But great. What I did see is he had some nasty out there to him this week, and hope that continues, because we're going to be stuck with him. And if he can be a nasty right guard, that's, I'll take it for now.
Here we are, still confused. I love it. That's like a Viking. That should be like a Vikings fan motto right there. Here we are, still confused. Yeah, I don't totally think Cleveland was bad, but I think there was a couple of plays where he biffed and whiffed.
He got tossed on that sack. He just got ragdolled.
Yeah, and I think that's the only thing that really concerns me with him. But a question I have for you guys, and now I know we have quite a few games left here, but do you think that Cleveland is brought back because his contract is up at the end of this season? Starting with you, Mike. Back to you.
I think if he keeps playing the way he is, with all the holes we have already on the O-line, I think it's important to keep the best one of the 3 and get rid of the rest. And with left tackles going down left and right, he can play tackle. So he's at least the most versatile of those interior linemen. So I think he's not going to be expensive. Keep him. He knows the system. He knows the team. There's some continuity there, and I think you need to keep it. Our tackles are there for hopefully their careers if they stay healthy, and you're going to need the veteran transition guy who's going to be there when we hopefully draft 2, 3, 4 linemen in this next year's draft, and hope one pick takes. So I think you keep him, because he's not a liability like he was his rookie year, where it was a turnstile. It was, he was figuring out the position there, or maybe it was his 2nd year. I'm not sure, but he's been improving the games I watched last year and even this year. But he's obviously, we want better than that, but he'll do for now. That's what I'll say.
Yeah. Tony, before I let you go here, the only players in NFL history with 5,000 plus career receiving yards prior to turning age 25. Guess who they are?
Randy.
And
Chris Carter.
No,
maybe
JJ.
No.
JJ.
It just happened.
Justin Jefferson.
Oh, I thought there was more on that list. He's 2nd, huh? Okay.
Yep, the only two players, Justin Jefferson and Randy Moss, with 5,000 plus career receiving yards prior to age 25. Yeah. Dude, this guy is special. Getting to positive stuff. But quickly, your thoughts on Cleveland coming back at the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Mike. I just think that's kind of how we ended up with the squad we have now is, look, you can love or hate this, the GM and the front office that we have now. But one thing that it definitely doesn't seem like they have any interest in is overpaying for players. And the thing that you always do, almost always in free agency is overpay, right? Overpay for middling players, and especially offensive linemen. So I don't think that they have any interest in overpaying for these linemen that probably are free agents for a reason. And I just think they would rather try to, have a homegrown offensive line that can be cohesive and hopefully, young enough where we're not getting into a bunch of contract problems. So now people again like to freak out about Kwesi and all this stuff. And look, I'm not saying he isn't without faults or that he doesn't deserve some criticism at this point, but let's keep in mind he's only had one season, now one full real off season. Rick Spielman had like 10 years to build an offensive line. So if you guys really want Slick Rick back, he had about a decade's worth of time and couldn't do it. So I think we can allow Kwesi a little bit more time to try to figure this out. Certainly it is a different approach. So we have to allow for that to happen. Certainly doesn't look like, sorry, Bears fans, but this doesn't look like Ryan Poles. I mean, it doesn't look like this is a dumpster fire of a GM hire, at least from my perspective. So I think that, Cleveland probably
start 0-4.
Cleveland probably comes back, but I think they'll address it. I just think they'll try to address it in the draft. And as much as I know that's going to hurt a lot of Vikings fans' ears, I just see them doing that the way they've kind of operated thus far.
Did you guys see this? SportsCenter just tweeted out, at just 24 years old, Justin Jefferson already has more career receiving yards than any Chicago Bears receiver in the team's history. The Bears played their first NFL game in 1920.
Incredible.
Well, they're not known for their passing.
You would think true. Like Bernard Berrien or somebody would have close to that, but it's not even close.
Yeah. No. Apparently he fell a little short.
I mean, technically,
until he came to Minnesota, maybe.
I mean, Brandon Marshall was on the Bears for a little bit. I don't know.
Well, he probably went over 5,000 after. I'm guessing they're not including players that were that got that after. I'm guessing.
Sure.
But
just saying. Yeah. Well, what do you guys think? Do you guys think? Sorry, I feel like I could go all night about how much. Oh, this team just makes me want to go crazy.
He certainly isn't Brad Holmes, says Drew in the comment section. And he is definitely not the man, the myth, the legend himself, Howie Roseman. Like, as much as I can't stand Philadelphia's fan base and I can't stand Nick Sirianni, Howie Roseman might be the best GM. I don't know. It's hard to say ever because he hasn't. I mean, he's won one Super Bowl, but he's really good. My goodness, he is so good at dealing to get first round picks. He gets Jalen Carter, possibly going to be the best player out of this draft, potentially when it's all said and done. And he just continues to put together great rosters. But anyways.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni looks like he's probably beat up at least 3 people at a deli. Like, I don't know what he is. He
and then cried about it afterwards, right?
Yeah, I said no prosciutto. Anyway, he looks like a Eagles fan. I think he looks like their fan base, and good for him. I think Mike Zimmer kind of looked like a guy that you'd find ice fishing on Mille Lacs Lake here in Minnesota. So I guess, we had that for a little bit. Now we got Minneapolis man with I don't know, Kevin O'Connell. Yeah, regardless, yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens with this team. I don't know. It will be interesting to see if they try to address some of the offensive line issues. They're going to have a lot of time to do it. As Mike pointed out, we kind of get a little mini bye now with it being a Thursday game. So, we're going to have to see this Udo injury, non-contact, look like a knee. I'm guessing, he could be seeing some significant playing time on the bench. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Looking forward, I think a question got asked earlier. Do I think the Vikings have a chance against the Chargers? Yeah, I mean, if they don't turn the ball over 36 times in the first half, then yes, that's the way it feels with this team. It's like if they could actually play football that was some semblance of looks like you've practiced at some point in time in the last 6 months, then yeah, I think this team could actually win a ball game. I think they could stay competitive with a lot of teams. It's just putting it together. And unfortunately, I'm old enough as a Vikings fan to have remembered seasons like this. And unfortunately, for many of them, and I'm not trying to be negative Nancy here, I might be saying the same thing come week 8 or 9, and just is what it is. So we'll see. If that happens, I just hope we lose a lot of games, guys. That's all I'm saying, because then we can get a high draft pick and then everybody will be excited again. I just don't want this team to end up with 7 wins. That just it'd be the most Vikings thing ever, is to have a terrible season but still draft 15th. There's something stupid like that.
Hey, you know what, Tony? We have never repeated ourselves on this show. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's always unique takes. I hope everybody knows that. Every single week I come up with new stuff. Mike actually has a little zapper, and it's I can't tell you where it is actually, but he zaps the heck out of me every time I say something the same.
There you go. All right, we got another question here from Drew. What would lead to a Vikings turnaround going forward? Well, he used the magic word, turnovers become extinct. That. so turnovers, that'd be huge. If you're talking about leading to a turnaround with this roster, that is what it's going to take. You have to stop turning the ball over. Because I don't know if the running game is going to get fixed with this roster. Because like I said, Flores, with the scheme tonight, maybe it'll be better next week. I don't know. But also Philadelphia's offensive line's quite a bit better than what Tampa Bay's was. So that was definitely part of it. But I would say don't turn the ball over and start being able to score in all 4 quarters, and don't I think it was RC Talks Basketball and Caitlin earlier. Stop with this crap of all of a sudden we're down, we need to come back. All of a sudden we're down, we need to come back. Score often and don't look back. Don't look up until there's zeros in the 4th quarter. That's my whole thing. Last year too, it just seemed like the Vikings played with a sense of urgency more so when they were down. And yes, that led to 11 one-score victories, whatever, but eventually that's not going to happen. Some of those games you're not going to have the opportunity to have the ball, like last week. Tampa Bay just ran the clock out, and you can't expect to have the last possession of the game with enough time to go down and score. You can't do that. Kevin O'Connell, I'm sorry. I know he said that last week. I was really hoping we'd have another possession to go out there and score. Yeah. Well, you know what? You could have called 3 better plays on the final possession you did have, so you wouldn't have to have worried about it. So trying to be positive, though. Even though it's extremely hard when you're 0-2 and this schedule gets even tougher. Addison has played well. Where does he rank in the draft wide receivers from the class? Feel like he could arguably be the best of the draft class so far. Too early to tell. I think it's very too early to tell. I mean, I'm curious to see how JSN looks. I think he could be one of those really good ones as well. But yeah, it's too early to tell. But yes, Addison looks really good. I don't know if anybody wants to jump on that, and then we're gonna get to closing things out here.
Well, I just wanted to say one thing, and then I'm going to let Mike talk. You were saying, don't do this. Don't turn the ball over. Don't. It just reminded me of that scene from The Waterboy where he's explaining everything, and then LT's like, and that brings me to my next point. Don't smoke crack. That's kind of what I feel like with this Vikings team. Like, we just watch them and we're like, so there's a good example of a team. Yeah. Anyway, Mike, you're up.
I just want to touch on the 13 points down, then we score, that type of thing. I think it's a complicated offense, and Kirk said so last year. He said he felt like he's in grade school. We become more relaxed in that hurry offense. Not necessarily no huddle, but hurry to the line, let Kirk read the defense, call the routes or whatever it is. That's why we're having success there. Nobody's thinking. They're going out there and they're running the route. They're playing the game. And I think we need to incorporate that more than obviously you always say that every week when somebody goes in a 2-minute drill and they're dicing the D up. The defense is playing differently. You're not going to be able to do that, but you don't have to do it like a 2-minute drill. Get to the line and then you can still run the clock, but they're just more comfortable with that faster pace. They get into that huddle and we're moping out. A few times JJ's getting to the line with 2-3 seconds left. And at that point, Kirk has no time to read a defense. They just have to snap the ball and run. And in regards to Addison, I think he has the potential, of course, to be the best receiver out of the draft. Zay Flowers looked really good last week with the couple of touches he had. And I think he's real explosive. And I think that's kind of what Addison doesn't necessarily have, is that explosive get up and go gear. He's one of the better route runners out of the group, though. And he has a better opportunity to shine. Addison does with JJ there. He's not going to get, even if he starts torching everybody, they can't get away from JJ. So he's going to have a better opportunity than most of these other wide receivers.
Yeah. Just want to remind everybody that's watching, if you wouldn't mind, please giving us a like on this video and also subscribing to the show. We'd really appreciate it. Also, we have an audio version of the show pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts if you'd like that. Even though we didn't have a show audio-wise this past week, we'll get back on that. Quickly here, gentlemen, we're each going to give one game ball out. You can give it to a Viking or an Eagle if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and give mine out to, I'm going to be the bad guy and give one to an Eagle. And I'm going to give it to DeAndre Swift. 28 carries, 175 yards, one touchdown, I should say. And then also he had 3 catches for 6 yards. That's the deal breaker right there. 3 catches for 6 yards, baby. But DeAndre Swift is my player. Gets my game ball. Tony, let's go back to you.
We just doing one game ball? Or we doing 2 game balls?
One game ball.
One game ball. Oh boy.
Give it to JJ. Why don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could give Mike some low-hanging fruit there. So I'm gonna, because I'm a generous host to my co-hosts, and Mike is relatively new to the podcast. So if you're new, by the way, Mike, this is his 2nd episode. So we love having Mike with us. Yeah. So I'm gonna be the bad guy. I'm gonna team up with Carson here. Probably let Mike be the good guy. I'm gonna go with Devonta Smith. I thought he obviously had a big game for the Eagles. Looked good for them. I mean, what did he end up total wise? 4 for 131 and 1. I mean, that's a heck of a stat line. So yeah, good for him. Good for my fantasy team, which still hurts me, even though it's good for my fantasy team. So yeah, that's my game ball. Mike, who do you got? You're going to be the savior for the purple.
Well, I'm not going to go JJ. He did what he does. It's nothing. If he scores, I'll give it to him, but he fumbled and lost the game for us. So,
Nah, there's that.
So he's the worst.
yeah, I'm going to go Daniil
Terrible.
Hunter. As you guys mentioned earlier, somebody mentioned that he's like the only shining star on our D line, and he knows that. And there's a bunch of times double team, he's spinning, he never gave up, and I didn't see him take plays off, even though he's just getting beat to the point where he efforted his way to 3 sacks and 5 tackles, and impacted the game as best you could when you're the only name on that line. So hats off to him for not giving. And he looked, for a guy on a 1-year deal, probably going to leave at the end of the year, or it looks like it at least. He looked upset at the end of the game, like frustrated that we couldn't move the ball at the end of the game there. And I didn't really see that out of him really ever. He's kind of a stoic guy, and you don't see any emotion, but I saw
good point
that it mattered more to him this year, it seems, than normal. So hopefully the D can step up and the D line can help him out, or he's going to get burn out and probably do the Zadarius Smith move of last year and just give up halfway through the year.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. As the stats show down there, and as you said, 5 tackles, 3 sacks, and most importantly, helping my fantasy team with 15.5 points tonight, Daniil Hunter. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Those are your game balls. We usually give 2, but we're running out of time here, so we just gave. Oh, we got plenty more comments here. Too evil to hope. 2 and 15. We need to trade Hunter. I love that Kwesi is tanking the team for us with these bad picks. All right.
Collapse for Caleb.
Yeah, that's right. Collapse for Caleb. There you go.
If we don't turn it around by week 5, we start trading.
Yeah,
it doesn't look. It's going to be here short with an 0-2 start. You're going to have to start thinking about it.
Yeah. Especially Hunter on a 1-year deal. I would actually agree with that. Too evil to hope. I would actually agree.
My fear is it's JJ.
Well, here's the thing. It might not be a fear, and we might talk about this at some point. It might not be a fear if you get a haul for him.
Yeah,
but
the compensation's right. I think the
that's
biggest
the question.
thing. Yeah, I don't think a mid-season trade happens for Justin, but depending on how the season goes, I could see them at least allowing for some absurd offers in the off season, and I think they do that all the time. Like, that's the thing. People, I know it's an old kind of saying and it's cliche, but everybody's got a price. It really is true. Like, everybody has a price. Now, if that price could be just outrageous and unrealistic, that's one thing. But yeah, I mean, if somebody offered a big deal, I've said it on this podcast before. Don't zap me, Mike. Is that it really is like, you buy low, sell high, and unless you truly feel the Vikings are on the verge of winning a Super Bowl, his stock's not going to be really any higher than it is right now.
Well, what's JJ's motivation to stick it out through a rebuild?
Well, exactly.
Like, will he start requesting a change? If we trade, we're not playing well. We trade.
He's young. That would be my comeback to that. He's young enough where, he could stick it out. He's probably, I mean, like Luke Braun said in our show, like, the hope would be that he's still playing at a high level 10 years from now. Now, maybe that's really high hopes, but
he's not Tom Brady of the receiver room.
But, I mean,
it's right.
He's the best in the league. He's playing at at that level. He's gonna think differently than that he's young. You know what I mean? He's gonna take advantage of him being the best in the league right now, and that's worst case scenario with it. But it is a possibility or a thought.
And I do think they'll probably flirt with a little bit of that. It's really just going to be dependent on how the season goes, and again, average draft position that they're going to have for this next year in the rounds, or when we look at where they're going to end up, because they're going to need to accumulate picks. And they're going to need to figure out what they're going to do at the quarterback position. I mean, oh my goodness, we're talking about next offseason already. So probably the fan base is going to come and the pitchforks are going to come out if I start doing that. But yeah, it is a thought. That's for sure.
Got Grandizer jumping in. Appreciate the comment, Carson Daly. Funny story. I actually talked and interviewed Carson Daly's wife. And I don't remember her name. That was when I worked at a radio station in Southwest Iowa. But so I made sure to tell her to tell Carson hello from another Carson, even though he has no idea who I am. Hundreds of millions of dollars can make people happy no matter where they're at. It's true. That's true.
Not the great.
But here's the thing. No, Carson Daly. I think you're joking there. Carson Daly's wife. I don't remember her name, but yeah, she's not my wife. Even though he called me Carson Daly. But anyways,
yeah, I think
I don't know if the money is going to be that big of a deal for Jefferson. I don't know if you were going to go in that route, Tony, but like Jefferson's going to have, I mean, we're already seeing it on TV, all these endorsement deals. Do you really think money is his top priority? Obviously, he wants to get paid, and obviously he wants to, reset the market and all this stuff. But with all his endorsement deals that he has and will get, I think he wants to win more than anything. Like, that's ultimately what I think he wants, and he's said that he wants to win. So, yeah. Tony, what were you going to say there?
Well, something similar. I mean, look at Tyreek Hill. I mean, the guy's making a boatload of money and is in a better situation in Miami than he would be here in Minnesota. So those two things aren't mutually exclusive. He can go get paid somewhere and be on a team that is contending. And I don't think that he's not smart enough to figure that out. So yeah, I mean, I don't, to me, he looks like too much of a competitor where the losing, I don't think he'd be good with just being on a mediocre team and being the guy. Yeah, no, I don't see it. I see too much frustration with him when things aren't going well for the team, because the thing is, and I'm sure like every player, he wants the ball, but boy, here's the difference between like a guy like Diggs and a guy like Justin Jefferson. I don't really see him flipping out when we're winning and he's not necessarily getting fed the ball, but he gets visibly frustrated when plays break down and he feels like the offense should be moving, even if the ball's not coming to him. So he wants to win. I mean, the guy's a competitor for sure. So I don't think he necessarily would prioritize. I mean, it's not like he's not going to make money. It's not like he's, still like
going to make money wherever he goes, maybe even more if he's not in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like he's looking at McDonald's or millions and millions of dollars if he doesn't, or if he stays. So yeah, no, I think that the team obviously wants to keep him. Here's the other thing too. You have to remember this is a business, and so like with the Wilfs, for instance, and Carson and I talked about this a little bit off the air. When the whole Rodgers thing happened on Monday, of course, a lot of the speculations, like, are they going to try to go get a veteran, blah, 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 blah. And of course, in the Vikings,
trade Kirk to the Jets.
Yeah, the Vikings, universe, you had a little bit of that floating around. Like, do you think
anytime there's an opportunity, there's an opportunity, he's hurt, call Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. And
who you going to call?
Yeah, but Kirk Cousins isn't any good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, right.
Here's the other thing, though, is people will say, like, yeah, but what if they were willing to pay like an absurd, value? Meaning, like, let's say they offer like 2 firsts for Kirk or something like that.
You'd be stupid to not do that.
See, in my
opinion,
this is the thing, though, is that
nobody's going to do it.
And they won't. I'll tell you why it wouldn't happen. because the Wilfs understand that if we were to execute that trade, we're going to start Mullins? What are we going to start? Jaron Hall? Like, basically, you're conceding the season at that point. Just like, it's over. We're going to have a terrible product for the rest of this year. And they're going to lose out on a lot of, the fan base, I think we're good fans, but any fan base is fickle enough if they feel that the team just doesn't give a you-know-what, and they're just like, why even watch this year? And that they have zero interest in throwing a season or tanking. That's why, you saw them not blow up this roster when they moved on from Zimmer. They wanted this competitive rebuild, and part of that is they need butts and seats. It's an entertainment business, so you can't knowingly put out a, for lack of a better way to put it, crap product and then expect people to keep shelling out money. They know people won't do it. So the motivation would be they don't, same thing with Justin Jefferson. Well, I think it makes some sense. He's the draw, right? Like, he puts the Vikings on the map right now. No matter how bad the Vikings are, the Vikings could literally go 2-15 this year, and still every fan in the NFL would be like, it's Justin Jefferson. He plays for the Vikings. That matters to an ownership group.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask you, Too Evil to Hope. You said you saw Ziggy Wilf, but I'm curious if you actually went up and talked to him and said, why don't you tank? Why don't you collapse for Caleb? Collapse for Caleb, Ziggy. It's the only way. But no, I made this point to you earlier this week, Tony. Like, here's the reason the Wilfs, I think, don't want to rebuild and start this process over again. They're old. Like, Ziggy and Mark are pretty old. They're getting up there in age. At least Ziggy is. It's like they don't want to sit around for another rebuild. And even though I think if they did the rebuild the right way, it could end up being a quicker turnaround to a championship than the way they're doing it right now. But we'll see. Maybe we don't need to go full Bears, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. When you're 0-2 with this competitive rebuild roster, it's like, well, what are you doing for yourself here?
They were strapped for money coming into it, or, this coaching staff and the GM Quezzy, they had no moves they could make last year. And they had very few moves they could make this year. But next year, it looks like we have a good amount of cap space opening up with it increasing and some of the moves they did. So past few years, it was almost, I wouldn't say impossible. It was really difficult to do anything to improve this roster. So if I'm right about that, and I think I am, I've been more patient with that because I don't know where they're going to go at guard. Who are we going to get at guard right now that's better than who we have? And there may be a few people better.
Told you, got to get that country hearth bread, Mike.
But yeah, there was not much to do, and there still isn't. But next year, there's more moves that can be made, but we're still a good team. I didn't think a lot needed to be done. There's just a few holes that are very glaring that all the talent we have around it, we're not able to showcase it because the middle of the line is very important and the middle of the defense is very important, and we're weak at both of them. And that just takes time to build, especially when you have no money and you want to keep your superstars. Maybe we could trade a few to get that, but where you train Daniil for more defensive linemen, it's not a very good trade-off. Or maybe a linebacker, a veteran
cheaper
linebacker,
defensive lineman, maybe. That's true. Yeah, that's the thing. I think they would be looking to get, or maybe multiple picks, in return. But yeah, that's the thing. They, like you said, Tony, I think it was you that said they don't really want to spend a whole lot of money on some players. Hawkinson and Jefferson would be excluded from that, and obviously the quarterback position, where they've spent money on Kirk. But yeah, in general, I would say a lot of the other positions they don't really want to spend a lot of money, and part of it is they don't really have the opportunity to spend much money, as Mike was mentioning too. Like, finally we have a little bit of cap space this coming off season, but it's still only like 40 to 46 million or something, and that's like with like adjusted to like everything, like in terms of like Jefferson's contract and different things and TJ's contract or whatever. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do this offseason. This is going to be an interesting offseason, just like this past one was, even though I thought maybe more things would happen this past offseason. I also thought that 2 off seasons ago, I thought they were going to totally rebuild. And as Too Evil to Hope has mentioned, there has not been a Vikings rebuild. And I totally agree. I don't think we've ever seen, oh, finally we're going to tank, even though technically I guess you could say the 3-13 season with Leslie Frazier, but was that really a tanking? Like, I don't think they were hoping to go 3-13 that year. But
would we get Matt Khalil on for that draft pick?
That's right. Well, no. 2012, or I think was Khalil, or 2011 maybe. But I'd have to go back and look. But it was, yeah, no, actually, you might be right, because Khalil was a top 5 pick, right? So yeah, that could have been
third.
Yeah.
4th, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. Whatever it was. Freaking Matt Khalil.
But his brother's pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. At least one of them. At least one of them.
That's how you know Matt Khalil's going to be really good.
Pizza's pretty good.
His brother's good.
His pizza's pretty good, Tony, right? Didn't you say that he had a pizza place?
Yeah, he did. He started some pizza chain. I don't know what it is. I haven't had it, though. I think it's Neapolitan pizza, which I do enjoy. Clearly.
All right. Well, let's real quickly take a look here. We are going way longer than I thought we would. Take a look at this schedule here before we end this broadcast here. So you got the Chargers, you got the Panthers, and the Chiefs, and the Bears. So ideally, gentlemen, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Ideally, you're going 3-3 into that Week 7 game against San Francisco. That's the ideal scenario. I mean, obviously, yeah, it'd be great to be 4-2, but I don't think that's going to happen. But what do you guys think of this schedule? Do you think there's an outside chance they are able to get back to 500 after those 6 games?
I think they could. I don't know how sustainable it is. I mean, look, I said this at the beginning of the season. Here's one thing I'll just leave it with a little silver lining here. I said I thought this team would end up at about 10-7. And then I after last week I said, well, that was with us winning the Bucs game. So maybe we'll just cut it back one and say 9-8. But I had us losing to Philly. So I still think this team could be in that range. I just, is that going to be enough for a playoff berth? I mean, you're really flirting with it. I think you got to get to double-digit wins. So I don't know. We'll see. I don't think it's unrealistic, Carson. I just think that this team has got to clean up. They've got to clean it up. Just the mistakes, the undisciplined nature of this team right now is they don't look like they deserve to win almost any game on the schedule until they clean that up.
To me, they really have to make hay from week 8 to week 14 if they're going to have any shot of getting to double-digit wins. Like when they play Green Bay, Atlanta, New Orleans, Denver, Chicago, and Las Vegas, like they have to win almost all of those games, I think, if they're going to really have a shot to get to double-digit wins, because the rest of the schedule is just daunting.
Well, I would say this.
Daunting.
I would say in the short term for me, I'm not looking too far ahead. Obviously, we're only 2 games in. I just think the next 2 games are going to be really critical, because I do think the Chargers are not a bad team, obviously. They're a more beatable team, in my opinion, than the Eagles. And certainly Carolina, with them still testing out a brand new quarterback, trying to figure things out, that's a winnable game. So I just think in the short term, let's try to go 2-0 in the next 2 games. See where we're at. I know KC's a tall task, but if we're 1-3, certainly 0-4, I mean, at that point, it's kind of like, who cares? So let's just worry about these next 2 games. I think if we can get to 2-2, then we can start to really figure things out and figure out how we can get back into competitive place.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking through that schedule, and I got to be honest, guys. I don't see another loss. Let's go, baby.
Paul Allen.
Yeah. I mean, we are on pace. We are on pace to go.
I don't see one.
15-2. I mean,
we're gonna put it together. I mean, it's pretty simple.
We're on pace.
Eliminate turnovers. This game, we have very few penalties, so that's one aspect that we were struggling with week 1 that we fixed. Now it's just the turnover, and we win this game going away. We win last week going away. Why can't that just happen the rest of the year? We just eliminate the turnovers. And we're undefeated.
We're not turning the ball over the rest of the year. It's written in stone already. You
can't throw 200 interceptions or have 400 turnovers in a season. You're only, it's 20 plus, 30 plus. We're already halfway there. So look for the rest of the season to be turnover free.
There you go.
We got Vic in the building. He's an Eagles fan. I wonder if Vikings fans notice the one thing they lack is the one thing Mike Zimmer preached from the ball and play stout defense. And I think we talked about that earlier a little bit, kind of more so with the discipline side of things, Vic, where the Vikings are not really that disciplined of a team. And that's always the problem with a player's coach, I feel like, most of the time, is like, can they get over the idea of not being able to discipline their team and like show, okay, hey, you guys actually can't stay up till midnight. I'm not saying that, but that they're doing that. But you know what I mean? Just like something like that, like a parent. No, you're going to bed and you're going to like it, like that kind of attitude. I mean, maybe not quite that harsh, but you know what I mean? Like, KOC's got to have a backbone. He can't just let the players do whatever they want. I know they're professionals. I know they're in the NFL, but you gotta have some sort of a disciplinary system put in place when players don't do anything, or when players do things. And I don't even think, like, for the Jordan Addison thing, maybe there was some sort of a punishment internally, but like, just as an example, like when he had that speeding ticket, did the Vikings punish him? Like, I don't think they punished him for that. Like, just something I'm throwing out.
No. Yeah, his hamster was having a tough time with its geometry homework. Yeah, I sorry, I didn't buy the dog thing. The dog thing sounded like the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard. And maybe
I had to go number 2. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I know where he was at. I wouldn't have wanted to stop at any of those gas stations either. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I appreciate the comment, Vic. One thing I would say, like, I get where you're coming from, but that Zimmer defense was horrible the last 2 years, which is the reason why he left, or he got the boot. So yeah, for the most part, yes. I mean, Zimmer, the big thing was, it was playing good, smart defense and trying to be mistake free. The problem is that that works really well on the defense, but the way the offenses are set up, especially in this day and age in the NFL, you can't impose the mistake free thing with most quarterbacks. I mean, unless you're talking about like even a guy like Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers would probably just give you the middle finger back in his prime. If you're like, so Aaron, you just don't make any mistakes. Because you need these guys to be able to sling it. And, I'm not a Kirk stan. I'm not a Kirk hater, but I truly believe it did set Kirk back having those few years with Zim, because Zim hated Kirk. And that was basically it, was just don't screw up. And that's a really kind of a crappy spot to put your quarterback in. When they feel like they have to be perfect, then they become Conserva-Kirk, and all you get is Mr. Check Down City, and your offense is just vanilla and boring, and you can't do anything. and then the guy gets rattled because he's always afraid of making a mistake instead of trying to take a risk. But yes, discipline, there's some question marks. I'm not going to say it yet. I'm not going to say I'm selling KOC as like he can't get this team together at all. We're still way too early for that. I'm just saying that there are some signs that it could be an issue, and I just hope he figures it out. That's honestly where I'm at. It's just like, not saying it's a thing, just saying before it becomes a thing, let's hope he can figures it out.
Well, I think you
right.
bring in Brian Flores real quick to help with that. You would imagine, right? He's going to be the guy who's not going to let any of this crap slide. So he's new to it. Maybe he doesn't have his voice yet in that coach's room like you would expect, but that's why you bring him in, not just his defensive mind, but to get some of that Zimmer-esque talking tos.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. Well, we got Israel. He wants us to acknowledge the Eagles. Well, we talked about them earlier, Israel. Yes, we know you beat us. This is not an Eagles channel, though. This is a Vikings channel. Didn't know if you knew that. Appreciate you coming over here. But
if you do want to check it out, I was on an Eagles podcast for 2 hours earlier this week. And we got to talk a lot about the Eagles. You don't need us to tell you guys are a good team. Just watch ESPN or any of the other outlets. They'll tell you how great you are. I just thought it was funny that the Eagles fan base, at least the one that I was speaking with for a couple hours, was so pissed off that that they won in the fashion that they did last week. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, man, this is like,
must be nice, huh?
This is like a homeless person listening to people complain about the Wi-Fi being down. Like, it's like, come on, guys.
This house is just too warm.
Yeah. I just wish I wish you could open the window and have a breeze, for goodness sakes. Wouldn't want to let the bugs in as I'm outside sleeping in my Magnavox box.
That's right. Oh, good stuff. Well, that is going to do it for the Skol Purple podcast. Fan Express line. We're going to get the audio posted for our audio listeners. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Sorry, it's not an Eagles podcast. Maybe we do wish it was, question mark. But we ride with our team no matter what happens, and we know that a lot of bad things happen because it's the Vikings. So we know. But that is going to do it for the show. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Tony. Thank you all for watching. And as always, Skol.
Skol.
Skol.